Alright, hello everybody, this is Omnigamer. I'm going to be giving some audio commentary on my newest Skyblazer run, new and improved. It's going to start off pretty quick. I'm just going to say in this first stage, the main goal is to get through, reduce as much lag as possible, and to get good damage boosts. The reason that you want to take damage here is because at the very end of the stage, you're going to be reduced down to 0 health, and it's quicker to take the damage earlier on and get a damage boost off of it, rather than have to wait for the fireballs to kill you. There's actually a lot of small optimizations in this stage, and that's helped me to reduce the time needed to go through the whole thing down to less than 30 seconds, which I didn't think was possible before, but I can do it fairly consistently now, and that's doesn't seem like much, but any small amount of time can really help out in this game, especially with the amount of optimization that is snuck in as a whole. Alright, the stage has very few actual text scenes, so it's kind of a relief. Unfortunately, you just still have to sit through this one every time that you start a new run, so it's a little bit of a pain. But some comments on some of the things that you're going to be seeing throughout this run. Early on, there are a lot of very quick and small technical tricks that save a fair amount of time, but they're oftentimes frame perfect. The main one that you'll see, especially in the next stage, is just zips. You can do zips a number of different ways, but the main thing about them is that you need to first get yourself stuck in the wall. There's a couple different ways to do this, but mainly involves crouching, punching, and jumping at a certain rate, and it'll push you into a wall in just such a way that either your foot is stuck or half of your body is stuck in the wall. And from there you're able to zip most of the time straight up. The only other option is going left, which is a little different, but they're used either way, depending on where you go. Unfortunately, this game, like most side-scrollers, goes left to right, so there's only vertical rooms that it's really helpful in this game. Small hiccup right there. I didn't duck all the way right in time. This is the first zip. I got it fairly quickly. It could have been done a little faster. This stage went alright. Hitting the main route is pretty much the only thing to do. This quick kill on the boss is something that I improved from my last run, where you have 2 punch cycles before you begin the comets. Another important point is after every time that you beat a boss, it's better to be closer to the middle of the stage, because the game has to move you to the center before it can advance. So you save some frames that way. In some cases it can save as much as half a second to a second. In this auto-scroller, there's really nothing to be said. It's an auto-scroller. I've experimented with a number of different ways to go through this, to either make it more entertaining or challenging. There's not too many ways, but the way I finally decided on, that also allows me to kill all the enemies and try to reduce lag, is to go through, kill every enemy, but not pick up anything. I don't think I'm successful in this run, but yeah, I picked up something there, so it's not something that needs to happen. Just something fun to try and do. Otherwise, just go through the stage as normal. Next up, we'll see Tower of Terralisk, which has one of the hardest sets of tricks in the game. It's nice that it comes in pretty early on, but it's very difficult to get perfect. It consists of 4 consecutive vertical zips in addition to getting stuck initially. And vertical zips are frame perfect, but even then they're not guaranteed 100%. It's much easier once you settle into a rhythm, but there are some instances where even if you get the correct input, you aren't going to zip. It's just something with how the game works. So after this section, we'll be going into the tricky room. It saves a couple seconds to be able to do these final 2 zips. You need to get yourself hit in order to get stuck back in the wall to zip through those last two, but that was a trick that was found by Blecky and Company. Major props to Blecky. I'll mention several other things that he noted and helped me to optimize throughout this run. And then the final zip right in this room. Ideally, I'll get to the boss room at 5:03 in my timing. I think I only made it in 5:04 in this run, but that's fine. There's only probably half a second to be saved throughout these first several stages, and with any run, making it out of the first continent is huge because it's very tricky to pull off all of the zips in this stage correctly on the first try. Alright, I'm going to use... this boss is kind of silly, just because he takes the same amount of damage no matter what you hit him with. So there's no way to speed up this fight, unfortunately, and it does take about a minute, so it's kind of aggravating, and unfortunately there are ways that I can mess up and hurt myself and make this fight take longer too, so it's a little tense, but not too bad. Next up is a mini-game. The only purpose of the mini-game is to gather some extra lives. There's no way to do it faster. The only thing to note is that when you can get hit early to end the mini-game early, but it's not until the mines start appearing, which is pretty well into it. And there's a specific spot that you want to be that'll provide the optimum number of frames for you to fall off the screen, and I try to set up for that every time I can. Something that you're going to begin seeing in each of the stages from now on is special tricks and things to basically allow me to pick up extra magic, because having more magic in this game is directly equivalent to getting faster times. There's additional tricks that you can do with extra comets, and it's just simply a faster way to travel. Unfortunately, the set magic drops around the game aren't enough to allow you to do everything, so there has to be certain ways to manipulate magic when you need it. Otherwise, the routes are much slower. So, how drops work in this game: as soon as you enter a certain room, each enemy has a certain timer associated, or there's a continuous timer that goes throughout the stage, and when you kill an enemy, the frame that you kill him on determines what drops from that enemy. So, by setting up the times that you can kill enemies, you can guarantee that you'll get certain drops from them. And right there, I manipulated 2 consecutive large magic drops from both of those enemies by setting up essentially a frame-perfect setup from the entry. And that will work every time, provided I don't do anything different. The rest of the stage is just dodging enemies and going through the ice crusher. This ice crusher isn't bad. There's some weird physics at play with some of the crusher mechanics, but none of them are particularly useful in this part of the stage that we found yet. Ideally, there'd be a way to go through slightly quicker so that you can essentially make it through one cycle earlier, but we haven't found any way yet. If you try to rush that last one, you will definitely be crushed unless you use a comet, and it's faster to just save the comet for the final boss, for the boss instead. So, again on that subject of getting drops from enemies guaranteed, you'll see me start to do some funny things later on, like as soon as I enter a room, I'll punch or jump at weird times, and it looks like it takes longer, but that's all for the purpose of manipulating a drop from enemies. So be on the lookout for those. Next up is the the troll falls, as I call them. The problem with this stage is that it's very short, but there's a lot of problems with the enemies on this stage, in particular the slimes. You'll want to kill every slime, or at the very least do all of your comets very low, because those balls that the slimes throw up will stop your comet every time. Take the damage boost there and save a little bit of extra magic so that I can take a small shortcut in the next stage. This is the water temple of the game. Water traveling is slower than regular movement, however you can speed this up by grabbing onto the walls, and cometing is the same speed regardless. Lost a small bit of time there from missing the switch. You can cancel your water kick by simply pressing the other direction after you've started it. This is the next case of manipulating magic drop. If you hold the magic button when you enter a new stage, it'll execute on the first possible frame when you enter into that next room. So I can guarantee that I will always get that magic drop from that enemy. This dragon is a little tricky, but worked out pretty well, and I got into the boss room with good time. This boss can give you a lot of trouble if you don't know one of the quick kills. Essentially, those clams will spawn large piranhas that will chase you around the room, and they are faster than you when you're not in the current. I wait 4 seconds between the later iterations and fire off the Starfire, and it's just enough to kill them if you use up all of your magic. But without that, it's a very difficult battle. Moving on is the Sandfalls. This stage is pretty simple. I will finish off the stage with 4 magic. There's a blind jump in it. It's not too bad, but the point is that I'm able to go through, kill every enemy when necessary, and there's a small zip at the end that saves a little bit of time. The 4 magic there is important because I take a small detour and go to the Fortress Roll next. This is another auto-scroller, and there are only 13 enemies that drop things here. I do not have any way to guarantee a drop in this stage. I only have visual cues, but because it's more or less a frame-perfect action, it's not guaranteed. It's actually I only have about a 30% success rate of getting a large magic drop in this stage, which allows me to take a small shortcut and save 2 seconds in the gateway, which is the stage following this. In this particular run, I am not able to get a large magic drop, but it is it's still worth it for the route in the long run. So there's roughly 1.5 seconds to 2 seconds lost because I didn't get the drop here. And again, there's only 13 enemies, and it's very difficult to hit them on just the right frame to get a magic drop. So it's unfortunate, but that's what happens sometimes. It's the only real remaining part of the run that relies on luck. So after this, I'll go back up, go to Gateway of Storms. You can skip over this stage almost entirely if you come in with full magic, but because I don't, I have to take a small detour and pick up that magic right there. I screw this up a little bit. I'm supposed to damage boost off that enemy, and I could have punched through the blocks quicker. So that's roughly 0.5 seconds to 1 second lost. Otherwise, the stage proceeds as normal, and I move on to the next one with no magic. There are some very important route considerations in this stage. Basically, there's air currents that will move you faster or slower depending on how you enter them. I can manipulate these bats to work around them much quicker, grab that. And the next part is something that's new. The idea is to get as many forward air currents as possible while saving still the half magic. These jumps are really tricky. If I miss it by a little bit, I will die, and the run is over. This getting that magic right there is a new addition to the run. It allows you to do 2 extra comets through the stage as a whole and save 0.5 seconds to 1 second. This boss is pretty random. The way that I beat him in this is lucky. Going into that room with half magic is provides a guaranteed quick kill, but it can still be somewhat slowed depending on where he moves after your first combo. But in this case, I got an excellent pattern out of him, and I saved a fair bit of time on him. Caverns of Sheol is the next really technical stage. You'll see all sorts of drop manipulation, special comets, and zips throughout the entire stage. So to start off, this first setup here is something that Blecky noticed about optimizing this stage. Just being able to go along that upper area is something that I didn't consider initially, and it works out to be quite a bit faster. I messed up that zip a little bit, but it's not too bad. Probably cost me a second overall. This is the next luck manipulation area. I get that drop from that enemy, and that allows me to move into the boss room and do a couple extra comets, which again saves quite a bit of time. This is the last one. Everything is planned so that I get that. I can save a little bit more time by jumping straight out of the lava, but I'm not completely practiced on that when I did this run, so perhaps later on I might do it in a later run, but it would save another half a second. It's important to try and manipulate this boss into the corner, just because the platforms will mess up this manipulation strategy. The idea is that he will only attack you in certain ways depending on your location. So if you're close to his head, he'll fire off the apples. If you're in a medium distance, he'll jump, and jumping takes the longest because he's not vulnerable during the jump. So manipulating him into that corner saves the most time overall. There's probably a better way yet to do it and manipulate the apples to a certain direction so you don't have to move away, but we haven't experimented enough with that yet. There's a secret exit to this stage, which I basically gun it for, that gives you full resupply of magic. Even though I only have 3/4 right now, I gain a magic immediately in the Great Tower, which is the final big technical part of the run. This zip, I need to use Warrior Force, which makes me invincible, so that I can zip through the spikes. Next up is a pretty nifty trick to crawl up into the crushers. There's a very small frame, a time window where you can be invincible and go up through a time when the crusher would otherwise crush you. And that allows you to take this much faster and get through 2 cycles sooner, which saves a large chunk of time. Again, that was another trick that was found out by Blecky and company, so much props to them. This is a problem. I tried to manipulate another drop here, but for whatever reason I'm a frame late. That samurai I just killed should have dropped a 4 magic restore, so from here on I have to improvise a little bit. It only really comes into play in the room following the water room. So the goal for this room, just to get through, avoid as many things as possible, and to kill at least one of the dragons, because they will introduce a lot of lag into the game when you get to that very top point. And this room, typically I would comet twice through it, but instead I had to improvise a little bit and get some damage boosts instead. In the end, I didn't end up losing too much time from it, but if I had the 2 comets there, I probably would have been able to save 2 seconds overall. I'll make a small mistake on the boss too. The idea is that you use Warrior Force, which doubles your damage, and you're able to get a lot of damage on him quick. Every time you hit him with Warrior Force, you should save 1 cycle. Ideally, hitting him only 9 cycles, but this one was 11 because I accidentally punched one of the cycles, which would do half damage. So that's another 3/4 of a second lost there. And that's the last regular stage in the game. Now we move on to a final mini-game, a auto-scroller, and a series of boss refights. The boss refights in general go quicker, with a couple exceptions, because the new Phoenix power does 8 damage, whereas previously the most you could have gotten out of any of your powers was 4. So there are some quick ways to deal with all of the enemies. Something to note is that every time you start and finish one of these sequences, you have a chance to talk to the old man. And this time he only has one line, so if you're mashing wildly trying to get through the lines, you will skip right into story, where he recounts everything that you need to do at this current point. So where it would give you a break if you skip it, if you're mashing, you will get penalized several seconds. So it's very important to pay attention, only skip one line, and then leave right away. Alright, Raglan Citadel is the very last obstacle to overcome. This initial portion is just an auto-scroller, a vertical auto-scroller this time. I try not to do anything too fancy here, because I have failed on this part before simply because I was trying to make it more difficult on myself for entertainment purposes. In any case, right after this it'll move into boss refights. There's a small hallway in between each of the refights that I will, if I have the magic, I'll try to comet through them. Otherwise, it's just a matter of waiting. At the top here, I'll use a comet to try and get to the door a little earlier. Placing it just right is kind of difficult. Ideally, I'd do it a little lower than that, but again, placing it just right is not the easiest. So the genie, a complete pushover. 4 hits from Phoenix and he's gone. And that gives me enough magic to do a comet and then another follow-up comet in this stage, or in this hallway. And once again, Terralisk boss, he only takes 1 damage still, so this fight should take the exact same amount of time as it did previously, which is a bit much. It's important to note that you don't refight every boss. In particular, you don't have a refight with the Wind boss or the dragon from the Great Tower. Which is fine, because I'd rather not have to deal with the randomness that comes with the Wind boss again, and the dragon from the Great Tower is silly anyways. So, it's all good. I get hit there and lose probably about a second. Overall though, up to this point, from not getting the magic, getting hit there, and a couple other small mistakes along the way, I've probably only lost 5 seconds from a completely perfect run. So, not too bad. This is pretty close to perfect, and I've done 1,000 attempts at this game, literally 1,000. This attempt happened to be my 1,000th run, according to my W-split count. You don't use Phoenix on that boss because, for whatever reason, he only takes 4 damage per hit rather than 8, so it's better to save it and still kill him the old way. The fast way to kill these clams is you need to Phoenix right away, and if you time it right, you can make it around in 1 cycle and get it on a perfect 2 cycle. Otherwise, you'd have to wait a certain number of seconds in order to hit them again. And right there, I did it perfectly. The final refight is the Dragophant, as I call him. This is a bit different. It's pretty easy. However, if you mess up your positioning, he could wander off into some place or start jumping around, which wastes quite a bit of time. I get him in this set perfectly. There was no extra invincibility time for him, so this went pretty well. And finally, you move on to a battle with Ashura, who is a complete pushover with Phoenix. The only chances for me to mess up here are if he goes too low and I can't get around the platforms, but it doesn't happen in this run. He has 48 health, and you can hit him 3 times per Phoenix, so I get it just about perfect in this. If he had gone any higher, I actually risked not being able to hit him because he can get stuck in the ceiling. But the fight is over. There's some text coming up, and it's the last text sequence that I actually have to do anything, and then begins the final battle with Raglan. A couple notes about Raglan. He has 16 HP, and he only takes 1 damage per hit. Every time you hit him, he will counter with a laser beam sort of attack that is very difficult to dodge, and I don't have a reliable way to dodge the laser itself, so instead I came up with a strategy of getting hit. The lasers do 2 damage, and if you touch Raglan's main body, you only take 1 damage. And it turns out that you have just enough HP if you spend your 4 magic on healing to basically go through the whole cycle without having to worry. And this is a fairly optimized fight. I screw up towards the end. I get knocked back from a hit that I was not expecting, and that pushes me off of his arm. I recover though, and that's about 2 seconds lost overall. And in the end, I still finish him out with just the right time. And there you have it, Skyblazer. I timed this out to be 26:06. I'm not sure what the final timing verdict will be, but I feel like this was a really good run. Again, there were 3 major mistakes and a couple smaller mistakes, but overall they amount to only 7 or 8 seconds. So a perfect run with this same route can get you just under 26 minutes. However, I've already put a ton of time into this game, and a perfect run has not happened yet. So I could give it another 1,000 attempts and try to break that 26-minute barrier. It would be very difficult, but probably possible. But for right now, I'm leaving it as is. 26:06 is very respectable, and there are still several places to optimize. I feel like if new strategies can be found, in particular, taking out that last random element at Fortress Shirol and getting a guaranteed magic drop would be extremely helpful. But as of yet, we haven't found anything that would guarantee that. Compared to the task time, the current task for this game, by my timing, comes in at about 24:10, so I'm just about 2 minutes behind the task, and that is very respectable, since the task has a task-only movement trick that is usable anywhere that you'd have a straight walking normally, and it saves a decent amount of time when repeated enough. So there's also a couple of task-only tricks that I was not able to attempt. The big thing is that the task is also able to manipulate magic whenever they need it, so magic is critical to running this game, and knowing where the drops are and where you can pick up new stuff is vital to being able to run this game with good amounts of time. But overall, I'd had a lot of fun running this. I hope a lot more people start to become interested. This kind of sat around as a sleeper hit. It's a well-designed game, some unique points and bosses, but I had a lot of fun running it, and as you can see, it's pretty quick once you're used to just about everything. And I would recommend trying it out for a race sometime, or if you haven't played it before, just give it a go once through, see how you like it. I don't know if I'm going to continue attempts on this game to try and break that 26-minute barrier, but at the very least for now, I'm satisfied with this. I have some other projects to move on to, and I hope you're able to enjoy this run. Alright, with that, Omnigamer signing out.